Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on the time you're watching this video. Hope you guys are doing well. And this is Yogesh Agiwal from Crossover Leadership Journeys. As I spoke to you in my last week's video that we are going to today invite Guy Winch. Guy Winch is a very popular psychologist in New York. And I'm going to play one TED.com video, one talk on TED.com. I think most of you must be familiar with TED.com. If not, I think you should look at TED.com. There are beautiful videos available on various topics from world's best speaker. So a lot you can learn from that. This particular video I've been also showing in my live workshop. It's a fairly long talk, so I'm not going to play the entire talk, but I will play some part of it. What I would like you all to do is get your same notebook or notepad where you've been making your notes, because Guy Winch is going to talk a couple of new concepts that I think you should make a note of it in your book, and then you should put it in the comment. How are you finding those concepts? Yeah. So when I see those comments, I'm going to respond to that, and as you apply his ideas, I think a combination of what you did in part one, part two, part three, and today is part four with Guy Winch. I think you will be absolutely getting a lot of confidence about implementing AI. I think the subsequent video, I'm going to bring in some exercises, which means that I'm going to give you certain scenarios and ask you to practice that in those scenarios. If you were to apply all your learning, how would you operate? And these are all real life scenarios. So what would happen is that when you look at those scenarios and you start practicing the concept, you will get the confidence of applying that in real life. And I'm going to give you those scenarios, ask you to practice, and you can check with me whether the approach that you have taken is the right approach. Yeah. So today, let's spend some time watching this video with Guy Winch. So I'm going to just share the screen, and you can keep your volumes on. So I'll not play the entire video, but I'll play for some time. So let me share the screen. Just give me a second.
I grew up with my identical twin, who was an incredibly loving brother. Now, one thing about being a twin is it makes you an expert at spotting favoritism. If his cookie was even slightly bigger than my cookie, I had questions. And clearly, I wasn't starving. When I became a psychologist, I began to notice favoritism of a different kind. And that is how much more we value the body than we do the mind. I spent 9 years at university earning my doctorate in psychology, and I can't tell you how many people look at my business card and say, "Oh, a psychologist, so not a real doctor." As if it should say that on my card. This favoritism, we show the body over the mind. I see it everywhere. I recently was at a friend's house and their 5-year-old was getting ready for bed. He was standing on a stool by the sink brushing his teeth when he slipped and scratched his leg on the stool when he fell. He cried for a minute, but then he got back up, got back on the stool, and reached out for a box of Band-Aids to put one on his cut. Now, this kid could barely tie his shoelaces, but he knew you have to cover a cut so it doesn't become infected, and you have to care for your teeth by brushing twice a day. We all know how to maintain our physical health and how to practice dental hygiene, right? We know it since we were 5 years old. But what do we know about maintaining our psychological health? Well, nothing. What do we teach our children about emotional hygiene? Nothing. How is it we spend more time taking care of our teeth than we do our minds. Why is it our physical health is so much more important to us than our psychological health? You know, we sustain psychological injuries even more often than we do physical ones, injuries like failure or rejection or loneliness. And they can also get worse if we ignore them, and they can impact our lives in dramatic ways. And yet, even though there are scientifically proven techniques we could use to treat these kinds of psychological injuries, we don't. It doesn't even occur to us that we should. Oh, you're feeling depressed. Just shake it off. It's all in your head. Can you imagine saying that to somebody with a broken leg? Oh, just walk it off. It's all in your leg. It is time we close the gap between our physical and our psychological health. It's time we made them more equal, more like twins. Speaking of which, my brother is also a psychologist, so he's not a real doctor either. We didn't study together, though. In fact, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is move across the Atlantic to New York City to get my doctorate in psychology. We were apart then for the first time in our lives, and the separation was brutal for both of us. But while he remained among family and friends, I was alone in a new country. We missed each other terribly, but international phone calls were really expensive then, and we could only afford to speak for 5 minutes a week. When our birthday rolled around, it was the first we wouldn't be spending together. We decided to splurge, and that week we would talk for 10 minutes. I spent the morning pacing around my room, waiting for him to call, and waiting, and waiting. But the phone didn't ring. Given the time difference, I assumed, okay, he's out with friends, he'll call later. There were no cell phones then. But he didn't. And I began to realize that after being away for over 10 months, he no longer missed me the way I missed him. I knew he would call in the morning, but that night was one of the saddest and longest nights of my life. I woke up the next morning. I glanced down at the phone, and I realized I had kicked it off the hook when pacing the day before. I stumbled out of bed, I put the phone back on the receiver, and it rang a second later. And it was my brother. And boy, was he pissed. It was the saddest and longest night of his life as well. Now, I tried to explain what happened, but he said, I don't understand. If you saw I wasn't calling you, why didn't you just pick up the phone and call me? He was right. Why didn't I call him? I didn't have an answer then. But I do today, and it's a simple one. Loneliness. Loneliness creates a deep psychological wound, one that distorts our perceptions and scrambles our thinking. It makes us believe that those around us care much less than they actually do. It makes us really afraid to reach out, because why set yourself up for rejection and heartache when your heart is already aching more than you can stand? I was in the grips of real loneliness back then, but I was surrounded by people all day, so it never occurred to me. But loneliness is defined purely subjectively. It depends solely on whether you feel emotionally or socially disconnected from those around you, and I did. There is a lot of research on loneliness, and all of it is horrifying. Loneliness won't just make you miserable, it will kill you. I'm not kidding. Chronic loneliness increases your likelihood of an early death by 14%. 14%. Loneliness causes high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It even suppresses the functioning of your immune system, making you vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses and diseases. In fact, scientists have concluded that taken together, chronic loneliness poses as significant a risk for your long-term health and longevity as cigarette smoking. Now, cigarette packs come with warnings saying this could kill you, but loneliness doesn't. And that's why it's so important we prioritize our psychological health, that we practice emotional hygiene. Because you can't treat a psychological wound if you don't even know you're injured. Loneliness isn't the only psychological wound that distorts our perceptions and misleads us. Failure does that as well. I once visited a daycare center where I saw 3 toddlers play with identical plastic toys.
So hope you found this video quite useful. So I've not played the entire video for you. So you can go to TED.com, and I've given the link in the Facebook introduction of this video. So you can take a look at it. But while you watch this complete video, do share your comments on this video so that I can respond to them. I think Guy's video is quite self-explanatory, so I don't think much would be required. But what I want you all to really come back to me is that how are you really practicing all this? Because by this time, since you have seen so many videos on emotional intelligence, very systematic manner, I think you should be able to manage yourself really well. So I really want to, and I'll be only happy if I can see people really are practicing and getting the best out of whatever they are doing. So whatever job, whatever profession, I think you should, and your health should improve, your relationship improve. So all that should happen, and I look forward to your comments. So the next video, where we are going to do this exercise, get ready. But I want you all to really practice all this so that when you do the exercise, you are able to demonstrate your understanding in those exercises. Yeah. So good. So I'll see you again very soon in my next. I think it will be part 5. I think, yeah, part 5 of the video. And do share this video with as many people as you can, because we have to teach this pivotal skill to as many people as we know. Okay. So thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you again. Bye bye.